of Management Studies, IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 017 Advanced Strategic Management for MBA program. Presenting Block 3 International Strategy, Unit 7 Evaluation of Market Risk Assessment, Part 2.
Objectives. After reading this unit, you should be able to understand the risk assessment framework of international trade, discuss various types of risk with reference to political, economic, and business risk, identify the causes of risk, and analyze the risk management techniques. Introduction. A firm which wants to consider investing abroad weighs potential advantages and disadvantages against the risks. Corporates are supposed to do an in-house analysis to evaluate and identify key factors for the firms to consider while investing in new international markets. There are several important factors to be considered by the firms prior to venturing into a foreign country, which include political, financial, economic, and business risk. Political, financial, and economic risk in international business. Political risk. International business starts primarily by understanding the stability of the government in the country before entering into any kind of business agreement. All the member nations of WTO, World Trade Organization, are committed to free trade, but there is an element of protectionism. Tariffs and quotas are used as restrictions in foreign trade and international business. Export-import licenses, customs duties, and laws regulating currency control are the important factors which needs to be understood before venturing into any kind of business with other countries. Each country has different legal and political system which has to be clearly understood before any international business or trade is planned. Financial risk. International trade faces risk of fluctuation in the forex exchange rates. The firm in this circumstance has to protect itself against losses due to fluctuation in exchange rates. Domestic business, on the other hand, deals with only domestic currency, thus does not experience such financial risk. Managing international trade requires extra precautions regarding the payments to be made in international currency or dollars. Firms having buyers in foreign countries have to take necessary steps and get assurance that the payment will be made as per the agreed terms and conditions. Foreign credit insurance letters of credit can alleviate much of the risk of selling products in overseas markets, ensuring sufficient information and knowledge about the buyer's credibility and ability to pay. Economic risk. There are several economic issues that are to be dealt with while a firm engages in international operations. That is, precautions needs to be taken to ensure timely delivery of raw materials or any product which is to be procured from another country, as any delay in the supply might hamper the production process and escalates the cost. Geographic and economic conditions of the country creates a lot of international barriers which are to be given due consideration while making any business plan dealing with international business. Economic instability of a country is considered to be a major issue when the international business involves third world nations. Lack of necessary infrastructure, economic plans, and economic conditions of the population living in those countries, per capita income, and other economic environment factors affect the success of international business involving these countries. Risk assessment. Different countries portray different business context with new sources of opportunity and risk. The management priority in such circumstances is to fully assess the risk as well as the potential rewards before investing in new foreign markets. Major political changes in China and India in the early 1990s, for example, opened up these economies for foreign investors. They had always been attractive markets, but also were made accessible. However, the high level of control still held by these governments over their economies, combined with the continued uncertainty regarding political change, resulted in a high level of political risk for investors. Risk assessment process. Risk assessment in a foreign trade is a two-stage process. The first being riskiness of the host country as a place to do business, and the second one is the risk involved in the particular type of investment. Any investment can only be made if the level of both the risk is manageable and acceptable. A. Assessing country risk. Country risk is a broad measure that focuses on the riskiness of the country as a whole and as a place for MNCs to conduct business. One prime time consideration is the level of current and future political stability of the country. A stable country obviously provides better business environment and opportunities to the MNCs to conduct business. Assessment of political conditions is made by gathering relevant information from several sources like national and international media, diplomatic assessments, or professional agencies that specialize in monitoring development in certain countries. There are some professional agencies which develop ratings for different types and degrees of risk in various countries with regard to foreign direct investment by MNCs. These ratings are developed by assigning weights to different political, social, and economic factors that could lead to political instability and disorder. These weights are then added and averaged according to a particular formula to arrive at a final rating of a country's level of risk. This system consists of arbitrary assignment of weights, thus having a strong element of subjectivity in the analysis where dependability is questioned. General phenomena is that Western countries being industrialized countries carry low level of risk and the yet to develop and low income countries are riskier. Exceptions to the case being countries with larger middle income group population because these countries are prone to socio-political turmoil and carry an even greater risk than some of the lower income countries. B. Assessing investment risk. Initiating the risk assessment is to start with assessing the risk attached to making investments and investigating the attitude of the host government with regard to similar investments made by other MNCs. The existence of local lobbies and the influence they exert on the government is a useful indicator of investment specific risk. Powerful local lobbies specific to an industry imply high risk, tax structures, industry standards, government discrimination, ownership and management requirements, repatriation conditions, export obligations, and local constraints should be considered to understand and assess investment risk. Causes of risk. Now let us understand the inherent causes of risk. Economic objectives. Difficulties in the balance of payments faced by the host countries might seek to protect its resources, especially foreign exchange, by increasing the inflow of forex and reducing the outflows by encouraging foreign investment and exports. The governments in these countries channelize efforts to optimally utilize foreign resources by imposing restrictions on profits, royalties, and dividends to be repatriated by a multinational corporation to its home county. Government of a country may decide to restrict exports and imports and implement an admissible time lag between the two which might interfere with the balance of payments and leads to lagging strategy of a firm devised to manage finances and avoid exchange and interest rate risks. Monetary and fiscal policies. Monetary and fiscal policies of a host government may not match with the expectation of an MNC. For instance, if the host country is facing inflationary conditions, it might want to increase the bank interest rates while lending and directly affect the profitability as the cost of the production will go up with increase in the cost of capital. The banks may be instructed to maintain ceilings on the borrowings to prevent excessive money flow into the economy of the host country. The MNC, on the other hand, would be keen on retaining their own finances to meet its requirement and circumvent these ceilings, which might result in creating displeasure of the host country's government and result in the risk of further punitive action. Fiscal policies followed by the host government may not be favorable to the MNCs. The host government might be interested in extracting more tax from the firms, while the MNCs might be interested in saving tax, which is quite contradictory to the government's policy and interest. Increasing taxes is a major cause of concern and risk for MNCs because it will affect the net profit of the organization. High tax. Increasing taxes from the host government, especially levied on the MNCs, is a major threat while operating overseas. Most of the countries, in order to protect their internal business organizations from competition and get a larger share of the foreign exchange, levy heavier tax on repatriable portions of an MNC's profit in addition to the other corporate taxes. Host countries might implement a particular level of foreign exchange rates to meet its economic interest. However, it's very demotivating for the MNC as there is an artificial distortion in the amount of funds to repatriate, which adversely affects its profitability. Economic development and industrial policies. Governments, through the industrial policies, would sometimes want to develop underdeveloped areas in the country which are geographically inaccessible, lack proper infrastructure, and economically not feasible, which pose serious threats to the MNC. In order to promote domestic small and medium-sized industries, host countries sometimes tends to provide subsidies and other monetary and fiscal benefits, which is not extended to another manufacturers, which makes the other manufacturers less competitive. Some countries restrict entry of MNCs to specific areas and do not extend marketing and sales support through government, which is otherwise given to manufacturers from the home country, which is highly demotivating for the MNCs and poses threat to even their survival in the country. Some industries are declared as core industries and are prohibited for entry because they might foresee a security threat to allow entry of MNCs into such areas as the government feels risk of security threat and endanger national security and might hamper the ability of the government to frame independent foreign policy. Colonial heritage. Many host countries were under colonial ruling in the past and have later gained independence. The colonial era is marked by complete domination of foreign rulers and economic domination by foreign firms. Having bad experience with foreign dominance, these host countries develop policies to discourage foreign firms, assuming that these organizations are only for profit and tend to exploit resources. Socio-cultural differences. Socio-cultural differences between a host country and a multinational corporation are one of the major reasons of risk. In some countries, social code of conduct sharply contrasts with those of MNCs and always creates fear to have a risk of offending local sensibilities over crucial socio-cultural issues. Basic behavioral norms followed by an MNC as a usual practice may prove offensive to the host country government or clientele. For example, in Western countries, female executives representing in meetings and negotiations may offend officials and clients from Middle Eastern countries. Sometimes simple gestures like greetings, giving gift and hospitality can become serious issue and offend people and government. Prior to venturing into a new country, an MNC needs to do sufficient homework and adapt to local systems and culture to avoid cultural risk and political risk. Circumstantial causes of political risk. Government change. Change of government in the host country is a major political risk faced by MNCs. In many countries, political opponent will have different policy from those of the government in office, and new changed government most of the time is keen on reversing the decisions and policies of the predecessors. Thus, an MNC in the good books of host government may find its assets under the threat of expropriation if there is a change in the government. Economic policies may also change with this change, and the new government may be hostile towards an MNC if the firm is perceived as a supporter of its political opponent. Political risk is particularly high in countries that are in the midst of transition to a new system. For example, from a capitalist system to a socialist system, or vice versa. Political instability in many countries, with instability of social and economic conditions of the host governments. It is sometimes difficult for the government to manage public discontent resulting out of the permission given to MNCs and governments in order to shift the blame of the economic ills, blame MNCs as a cause of those problems. Politicians in power often play on the inherent mistrust that the general public contains for the foreign economies and the foreign firms. MNCs also face the risk of adverse political activity from the opposition parties, who always look for issues and situations to criticize the government, and in the process, MNCs face the consequences. The host government support for an MNC is used as an opportunity to criticize the government with an issue to manipulate nationalist feelings by propagating that MNCs are exploiting the country by misusing the resources and the government is biased and supporting MNCs instead of local firms. Socioeconomic policy and environmental groups are also one of the causes of risk for MNCs in a foreign country. MNCs usually have large investments in factories and attractive industries which easily attract attention of consumer, labor groups, and environmentalists and get attacked for causing pollution and not maintaining safety standards, which could be a biased judgment when compared to the firms within the host countries. Such attacks sometimes evoke more active and serious penalty from the host government. Attitude of the host government many a times depends on the relationship and bilateral ties between the governments of the home and host countries. In several cases on the situation of breaking hostilities between two countries, direct or indirect action is taken on MNC and their properties and investments were confiscated without compensation. For instance, when a country bans some export towards MNC's home country, it may retaliate by blocking the repatriation of the profits earned by the MNCs. Local vested interest. MNCs sometimes face adverse actions from the lobbying efforts of local vested interest as a norm. MNCs enjoy the benefits of economies of scale and thus have competitive power and tends to introduce dynamic competitive force into local economies that upsets the entrenched position of local business organization by capturing market share and reducing the profitability of the enterprises. An MNC is often able to expose the weakness of local business by providing superior quality product at relatively low price and often compel the local business organizations to improve the quality or succumb to the operating inefficiencies in a competitive marketplace. Some local business organizations accept the challenge to improve while others may not respond. Those who do not respond fight the intrusion by pressurizing the government to impose various forms of restrictions and taxes, resulting in increase in the cost of goods produced by MNC and reduce its ability to compete. Risk management techniques. While operating in the international markets, the firms needs to manage risk to stay in the market and avoid unnecessary hassles. Some of these risk management techniques are discussed in this section. First, rejecting investment. MNCs feel that the risk in countries with potential uncertainties are much higher than the returns, and some of them do not want to invest and thus reject the potential investment. Rejection may also occur because of disagreement in the terms and conditions between host country and MNCs. Sometimes the host country, in order to attract MNC investment, may relax some of the condition. Second, long-term agreements. MNCs find a way to reduce political risk by negotiating with the host governments and agreeing upon long term commitments. Negotiating with these safeguards requires skill and foresight. A balance must be struck between achieving the safest possible terms for the firm and recognizing the current national policies of the host government. The limitation of these safeguards, however, is that there is no practical way to enforce them in the event that the host government reneges on its part of contractual obligations. A government is less likely to take any adverse action once it's a legal binding through a legal agreement as compared to a situation in which it has not given any assurance. Third, lobbying. MNCs many a times resort to lobbying politicians and officials and host governments to influence the direction of policies that affect them to avoid or reduce political risk arising out of the potential actions taken by the host government. Direct lobbying is done by establishing a liaison or representative office in the capital city of the host government. The representative of the firm establishes contacts with local officials and politicians and lobbies them to maintain favorable policies for MNC. Sometimes local liaison agent is used to lobby with the government and local officials, especially in countries with complex political and official structure, which is difficult for the outsiders to understand. Indirect lobbying is favored by MNCs in countries where local officials are adverse to direct dealing with foreigners. Lobbying can also take the form of influence buying, bribing the officials in the shaping of official policy and attitudes of the home government toward MNC. Although many multinationals do not admit offering such bribes for obvious reasons and is common in many countries. 4. Legal action. In countries with efficient legal system and independent judiciary, MNCs can resort to legal action if threatened. Recourse to the law would be warranted when a MNC is of the opinion that a new decision or regulation of the host government is illegal under the laws of the country or is in violation of any initial agreements made with the government of the host government. Legal action, however, is only taken as a last resort when there is no other option, and such actions are only taken by the firms that have decided to divest their investments in the host countries, because bringing a legal suit against the host country governments is likely to bring retaliation. 5th, pressure for home country. MNCs sometimes, while facing adverse position taken by the host government, seek intervention from their home governments, generally through diplomatic channels. The Foreign Office of the home country generally exerts informal pressure on the government of the host country to change its attitude towards MNCs and make favorable policy decisions. If the issue is important, the level of intervention can take place even at higher levels of the authorities like state head, etc. Apart from general threat of deterioration of bilateral relations, home governments sometimes hold out thinly veiled threats of retaliation against the corporations of the host country in the jurisdiction of the home country or threaten to erect trade or other barriers. This method is effective in situations when relations with the MNC's home country are particularly important to the host country. 6. Joint ventures and increased shareholding. Many MNCs decide to invest in host countries as joint ventures with local corporations and try to avail a high shareholding to be on the safer side, and such ventures reduce political risk. One MNC partners with a local firm. Decision against the MNC would also affect local partner. A local firm partnered with MNC supports the MNC in case of any government decision which will affect the MNC negatively. Local firms have contacts and better understanding of the business scenario in the country. MNCs partner with local firms in order to get local support against adverse government decisions. The partnered local firm will exert pressure restraining influence of the government contemplating such action. Local firms will also help the MNCs by using their contacts within the country at various levels of the officials and governments that could be used for lobbying and solving internal problems on behalf of the MNCs. Host governments would take more indulgent approach to the MNC operating in joint venture because it would be perceived as sharing its profit and technical know-how with a local firm, and the traditional exploitative image of MNC would be mitigated. Some firms go with a different route to achieve similar objectives by increasing the level of shareholding of a local partner instead of going with a joint venture. There are instances where increase in local shareholding is effecting at the behest of the host government, which imposes a condition for the continued operation in its jurisdiction. Increased local sharing will increase the benefits of the host country in many ways. The amount of repatriated profits to a foreign economy automatically reduces the increase in shareholding of the local firm, as the local shareholders receive their dividends in local currency and thus saves forex of the host country. The foreign exchange liability resulting out of share appreciation is also automatically curtailed. Larger the amount of local shareholding, the policies and operations of the corporation are more open to government scrutiny and control. 7. Promoting host goals. MNCs many a times promote host countries' objectives in order to gain the country's acceptance of its operations. For example, MNCs try to increase exports and maximize foreign exchange earnings. The action is strategic to impress the government of the host country, as they tend to support an organization which is contributing to foreign exchange earnings of the economy. With the generation of export earnings by the MNC for the host economy, it becomes fairly difficult for the host government to justify any adverse action against the firm, as the drain on the foreign exchange resources is removed. 8. Risk insurance. Some countries have agencies that offer insurance coverage against political risk faced by MNCs based in their countries. For example, Overseas Private Investment Corporation (OPIC), a firm in United States, guarantees protection against risks faced by MNCs in developing countries. OPIC provides coverage against various eventualities that can adversely affect the MNC in a host country, such as expropriation, blocking of repatriation of funds by a host government, and problems created by the breakdown of law and order. The World Bank, in an effort to promote private investment in developing countries, has an agency that protects corporations that invest in such countries from different parts of political risk. This agency, which began operation in 1989, is the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency (MIGA). Risk coverage through MIGA is intended to allay fears of political risk that prevent many MNCs from investing in developing countries, even if the latter are open to overseas investment. 9th, contingency planning. Despite all the necessary efforts to mitigate risk and various methods adopted by firm and good relationship, there might still be an element of political risk of nationalization, expropriation, or other forms of unacceptable regulatory control and imposition. To guard against such situations and eventualities, most of the MNCs have contingency plan made when the investment is first made in the host country. For example, if a country is considered to be risky in terms of possible expropriation, firms try to reduce the value of their physical investment and rely more on the supply of expertise and know-how that is paid on a short-term basis. A country also may be considered dangerous because of technology leakage. In such a situation, the MNC would probably retain the know-how at its headquarters and supply intermediate products to its subsidiary for the final stages of processing or manufacturing. Summary. Investment in international business requires a cost-benefits analysis of the benefits gained versus the risk encountered by the investing firm. Influencing the decision to expand internationally are the opportunities to tap larger markets, host country regulations requiring local production, achieving economies of scale, competition, implementing quality controls, raw material sourcing, forward integration to eliminate middlemen, and the acquisition of new types of technologies. Counterbalancing these factors are the political risk MNCs face from unilateral actions or expropriation by host country governments. Political risks increase when the MNC and the host country have different economic objectives or conflicting monetary and fiscal policies. Circumstantial political risks may occur when the host government changes and the policies of the preceding government are reversed, or when the current government facing political difficulties or social unrest must amend its prior policies to the detriment of the MNC. Environmental constraints in international business host governments may also impose a variety of national controls on MNC's activities, including limitation on the repatriation of profits and dividends, efforts to curb transfer pricing, implementation of price controls, restrictions on foreign ownership, local staffing and management requirements, import content rules, and labor and social controls. Assessing political risk involves first assessing the riskiness of the host country as a place to conduct operations and then identifying the level of risk assumed by the MNC for making a particular investment. Political risk cannot be eliminated completely, but management techniques can help reduce the level of political risk. Such techniques include not investing in particular countries, establishing long-term agreements with host country governments, lobbying, legal action where a well-developed legal system exists within the host country, obtaining political pressure and assistance from the MNC's home country government, providing for local ownership or joint venturing, promoting host government objectives, developing contingency plans, and purchasing insurance coverage for political risk.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 016 International Business Management. Course Coordinator Professor G. Subayama. Voiceover by Chitra. Edited by Ashok Sharma. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.